That too, it's really cool.
All right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll get started. Call the regular Hutchinson Utilities meeting to order. Before we get started, are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared by the commissioners?
I have none.
I have none.
All right, thank you. Item 2 is to approve the consent agenda, to approve the minutes and to ratify payment of bills. Is there anything anybody want to pull out of there?
No questions, I'd move to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by Anthony, second by Don. All in favor. Motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is to approve the financial statements.
So just kind of touch on a few things. Again, I think on that first page was combined divisions. Jared's been putting on kind of tracking the accounts receivable, obviously with we've had over the last year and a half, and now we're coming back off of that and starting to move towards the disconnection process that we talked about. Just giving you an update there. You can see from March 2021 to April 2021, the last month, you can see some of our past due has gone down about $34,000. So what you're starting to see is people are starting to see our communication that's going out there. People are starting to call in, starting to make some forms of payment and then getting on budget plans where they need to. Some are paying it up in full because they know that we're going to start the disconnection process, or the funding is starting to get into the pipelines, the federal stimulus dollars. So we've had quite a few people reaching out to our UCAP agencies and some of the other resources that we have in town. So you're starting to see some of that happening. So hopefully that trend will continue over the next couple of months, and we'll keep moving those receivable balances down in the right direction. So we'll see where that goes, but just wanted to update you on that. But it seems like we're trending in the right direction already, with the initial communication going out. We're starting to get some calls up front about kind of working through things. On the electric side, if you just notice, I'm looking at kind of the consumption area, you'll start to see now that we're into April 2021, you can start seeing the shifting in our classes again back to post-pandemic kind of usage. You can see our residential classes are now starting to come down. People aren't at home as much, quarantine, and so those numbers are starting to come down. We're on the flip side, the small and the large general customers, people are back to work, and so you're starting to see that trend where our classes are going to readjust back to what I would say are normal conditions prior to the March 20th start of COVID. But otherwise, overall, we had a little bit uptick for the month of April. On the electric side, obviously on the gas side, we're down a little bit. It was a little bit warmer this year. Overall, year to date, pretty close to where we were in 2020 on the electric side. Financials are tracking fairly consistent for the month. Obviously, our capacity sales are up a little bit more with some of our structured contracts. The market sales are up in April over last year, about $22,000. So we made up some sales for resales on the revenue side. And now we have a couple months in May already this month that we've had some pretty good market sales as well. I think we had one, I don't remember the date. I think we had close to $60,000 in market sales. The market was around $400 a megawatt for pretty much the entire day. So we had units 4 or 5, 6, 7 running all day. So just in that one day we made about 60 grand. So there was a couple other days that were high. They weren't quite to the $400 megawatt an hour, but there were some in that 50, 60, 70 that were well above our 15, 20% margin to run. So we've been running. So I'll be curious to see where May ends up. But we are starting to see a little bit of tick up. No real change really in the market. There was no major shutdowns in the areas. There didn't seem to be a significant peak load in the MISO market. So it's kind of, we're not real sure why the market prices were that high up here, but they were. So good thing for us that we had some generation, we can capitalize on some of that. And then on the natural gas side, fairly consistent month over month, just $200,000 profit we did. Again, as we start transitioning or start moving towards the end of the year, obviously we've talked about it a couple of times, building our rate stabilization fund back up to that $600,000. And so what the plan is internally here, as we look at our rate stabilization fund and what we charge, the March, April, May timeframes, we'll try to recover about $50,000 that we're putting back in the rate stabilization fund during these couple months. And then as we get into the summer months, we'll back that down to about $20,000 roughly in that area where we're at least trying to put that much back in. The reason for the downtick in the summer months is if we keep it at that $50,000 level, then you're impacting the commercial customers more than the residential. And so we want to make sure we're staying somewhat equitable as far as how we're recovering that money. And then as we get back into the fall, August, September, October, November timeframe, we'll see where we're at here through the summer, and then we'll readjust and making sure we're collecting, if we have to collect 50,000 a month or 30,000 or 60, you know, and then we'll add on that fuel cost adjustment we need to get us back to where we need to be. So, but overall, the gas prices have been fairly consistent on that side. So as long as we stay the course with our contracted gas and the spot market pricing stays in that $3 range, you know, we may have a real minimal fuel cost adjustment that goes on where we're average resident, maybe it's $2, you know, that they're paying, you know, on the fuel costs to get us that rate stabilization fund back up. So, but otherwise, things are tracking pretty good on the natural gas side as well so far. I think that's it for the most part. Any questions on the financials? Anyone has?
No.
Okay.
For a motion to approve the financial statements.
So moved. A second.
Motion by Monty, second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to communication, legal. Mark, do you have anything for us today?
No.
And then back to you, Jeremy.
So just some areas, just for some discussion. Obviously, projects are starting to ramp up here on the field with services going in. Plan 2, the 2 transformers, if I don't know if you've driven by, they are up. A lot of it's been hooked up. They're still going through some testing phases and working on some switches and breakers and things up there. But you'll notice if you drive by, you'll see the 2 transformers, the main one and the step up, are in place on the pads. So that project's going to move forward. I would anticipate us being done with that one in the next month or so, and we're ready to move forward. The capacitor bank at the McLeod substation, they're in full force out there. There was a little bit of delay back in March when we had some rain and it just got real wet out there. They couldn't bring in a lot of the equipment. They were rutting everything up, so they pulled up for a few weeks and now they're back in it. Vendors are out there, GRE is out there right now, working on some of those things. Our guys have been out there working through and redoing some configuration on our systems out there and some more breakers and things of that nature. So the anticipation is that we'll be looking to energize that substation up probably around mid-June is the goal right now, 2 to 3 weeks out. So during that time, they still have to do some synchronization and some testing. GRE is doing most of that since they're in charge of the substation as far as how the power is flowing through in the grid system. So they'll be out there the next couple of weeks with their engineers working through that. So Dan's been on that the last 2 weeks. He's been heavily involved in that stuff. And as the plant shut down and they're putting in all the equipment for the capacitor banks, we're also doing a lot of our updating on our RTUs and some of our circuitry and things out there while the substation is down. We typically wouldn't have it shut down because it's a big transmission line that feeds a lot of the area out here, but while it's down and they've got power rerouted, we're in trying to get our stuff updated and synchronized with their timing so that when they re-energize that back up here in a few weeks, everything's ready to go. So yeah, all the equipment is in. It's mostly, again, just the synchronization and the testing and the breakers and making sure everything syncs up before they re-energize it. So that piece is moving forward on there. I did send you guys out some just business updates for the month, some things to think about as we look, you know, through the calendar year here. Obviously, summers are going to go fast, and there's a lot of vacations, and people take time off. But things I really want you guys to be thinking about, and I'm certainly open to feedback. But I just want to keep things on your radar. Strategic planning. I've anticipated or thought about August, September timeframe for strategic planning. Get back together, talk about, you know, what are some of the visions that the commission has. Where do you want to see us go in the future? And there's obviously a whole host of topics we can talk about, from renewables to electrification to EV cars to how much more do we want to add infrastructure in town? Where do we want to be, you know, on that continuum of how progressive do we want to be, or how in front of maybe legislative policies and regulations are. So those are big topics for you guys to kind of think about and kind of keep those things in your radar. But August, September timeframe, is that a reasonable timeframe for you guys to get back together and re-engage topics as we move into the calendar year? Or does that not work well for you guys?
I think that should work.
Yeah, so I think September's better than August, probably.
September? Okay, we'll shoot for September. We'll get some dates out in advance, and you guys can kind of take a look at that. The citizen survey, I did send an email out a while back on that piece. Again, I sent you the kind of the quote. The piece I really wanted to get some feedback from you guys as we move forward, or we still want to move forward. Are there particular topics or discussion items that you want to see on the survey that are important to the board? I kind of threw some things out there. I mean, some of the more general topics are, where do you guys stand on customer satisfaction? Do you want to get some feedback on how well the customers in town are satisfied by the operations and customer service? Reliability is always a pretty common one. In the business that we're in, do people feel we're reliable? Are there things that we can do operation to make, to have better reliability? A couple of the ones that are a little bit more kind of opaque are, programs. What type of programs are people interested in? Now, with that being said, sometimes people don't know what they want until you kind of give them the program. And so those are discussion items for you guys to really think about. Where do you guys envision us being with certain types of programs that we may want to roll out in the future, or things that you think would be important for customers to have? As we roll out more renewable programs like the Bright Energy Choices, we'll keep moving those energy-related things forward and bring those to you. But if there's other things kind of outside of that realm that you think would be important for you guys to have at least some general feedback from customers on, to say, hey, there may be some interest in the community for us to pursue that, or put some resources to that, and at least do a study or an assessment on something. Those are the types of kind of thoughts that I'm looking for you guys to provide, so that we're tailoring certain questions certain ways on the survey. So I don't know if you guys have thought about some of that. I haven't gotten any real feedback, but I just want to keep that in your guys' minds.
I had some thoughts, a little bit of random thoughts on that, Jeremy. If we started a survey 30 days from now, could we have feedback from it for a strategic planning session this fall, or would we have to move ahead without that and revise it next year, or what's the timing and how does that jive with a potential strategic plan?
So when I looked at their initial proposal, and I talked to her she said it's a 3 to 4 month process.
Okay, so that wouldn't really work for
from beginning to
2021.
end. So we'd have to start, if we started it by mid-June, it'd be close to that September timeframe. Obviously, the more lengthy your survey gets, the more time they need to do the compilation and some of those things, but it would be in that ballpark. So we could do it, we could make it work. We just would have to initiate it fairly quickly and get on that, assuming that they have the staffing, or they don't have other projects tied up already.
So as a commission, what do you guys think? Would you rather us spend a little bit of time coming up with topics on a citizen survey, get feedback from it, and go into strategic planning? Or do we want to go into strategic planning, come up with some topics that we think they might be interested in, push out a survey, get feedback, and then pursue that next year for strategic planning or revision? What would make more sense?
I think I'd like to have it going into strategic planning.
It'd be more action oriented if we had it sooner.
Right. I think that fits. Trying to take the data and actually doing something with it in a timely manner. I like that approach.
I do too. Do we have the right questions to ask though in the community survey? I mean, is there some good examples of other members or MMUA and some other surveys done that we could incorporate, or
Well, that's
questions that we
feedback,
may
yeah.
not?
I can get some general template ones, and she'll have some too that she can provide us, certain
Okay.
questions. Some of the questions that she asked me though, and it comes down to really where you guys want to be. Some of them are, you can have open-ended questions that you'll allow people to rate, and you can have more of a direct where you're looking for a yes/no response. So that type of feedback from you guys is important for us to craft the survey in an appropriate way, because you can come up, I'll tell you, there's about a half a dozen to a dozen ways that you can craft questions for the response you're looking to solicit. So
I think the more open-ended questions you have, the less responses you get.
I agree with that. I think you have to have an opportunity for somebody to leave a comment, written comment, but I think most of them should be filling a bubble, is what my read would be. And then I think we get a better response rate that way.
Satisfaction, I think that's a good topic in programs.
Yeah, customer satisfaction, reliability.
Reliability, I don't know. We know what we provide there, so that's a perception. I mean, can we make anything that we do more reliable at this point? I don't know that we can.
I think I'd be more interested to find out if they think we're reliable or if they don't even think about it, which would tell us we're reliable.
Right, yeah, if it's not thought about, we're right where we think we are. I mean,
I guess I don't.
To me, the piece on the reliability, I mean, to your point, we can always try to be more reliable, but it's pretty hard to be above 99.99, 98%. But I think the perception piece is an important piece, because if the perception is that we're not reliable, then we're not doing a good enough job of communicating and marketing out our reliability here. And that would be an important point for us to know, because Angie and I have talked about, we don't do enough marketing and communication on what we're doing here and why we're doing it and the things that are in place. So that would be an important piece.
I think that's an important question to ask. We think we're reliable, it's a core value. Do they understand that we're reliable? Or do they know how important reliability is, or whatever?
and asking it from a message standpoint, not from a, hey, we need to make it better standpoint. I can see the value there.
And the other thing, there's just a lot of buzz and a lot of momentum in EVs, electric vehicles, and I'd like to get a feel from our ratepayers of how many people in the next 2 years or 5 years or 10 years have plans to buy an electric vehicle, because that could drive some programming and
Yeah, a lot of infrastructure.
internally, from rebates and CIP to CapEx planning to do we need more electric vehicle stations and so on.
Correct.
That's just a little bit of an increasing dynamic now with all the action that's happening in the EV industry. That'd be the one topic I came up with that might be kind of trendy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Outside of that, even though I've been paying attention for a decade or so in the industry, I don't have anything like that's burning questions. Feels like there should just be more of a standard. 80% of the questions are industry standard, and the 20% apply to Hutchinson. Maybe, I don't know. That's
So
how I
there
feel.
was one time we had talked about participation in a solar garden. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's something that,
For the if there's a second phase, if there's need for demand for a second phase to the solar garden, subscription based or not,
Mhm.
or support in the community for an expansion.
And I know some of these too, when we've done these surveys in the past, they'll tell you if you're looking to do these surveys, every 5 years, you want to create some consistency in your questions so that you can do trend lines, right? So kind of that point of standardizing a certain percentage of them so that you're getting the same response on that survey's question. And if you want some ones that maybe are more applicable to the timing of when you're doing the survey, then those are usually what you typically see on that. So just keep that in mind from a trend line too. If that's an important vision for the commission, is to continually update or look at that and see how things trend. We'll want to keep those things in mind. And you can do a more formal one, which is what we're talking about here. You can also take those same questions and do a more informal down the road too. If the commission says, hey, we've got enough formal data, we kind of see a pretty good trend line here of what our customers think and how we operate. And then a more informal, we can do some of that in-house and put surveys on our websites and put them on Facebook polls and just do it more here versus going through the official mailing and the official analytics and the evaluation piece. So just keep that in mind as well for what I would say would be future follow-up surveys. But I can certainly try to put something together, and I'll talk with her and kind of craft some stuff, take into consideration some of the stuff you guys said. I can send it out to you, and you guys can provide feedback, and then we can try to move it forward if we want to try to get something done before the strategic planning.
I think that's a good idea.
Will you complete that survey just by mailing only, or would you go online with it too, or?
Yeah, so normally this one, if you look at back the proposal I sent, they'll send out, I didn't go back through it this morning, but they'll send out 2,000 to 3,000, or they randomly, it's gonna be a scientific one, that's why it's more formal, so they randomly pick, right? Their methodology is randomized, and then they'll put it out to 2,000 to 3,000 people in the community. But typically, the more formalized one is it's gonna be a paper survey where they want you to fill it out and send it back in a envelope that's already pre-stamped or postage is paid for, and then get those back. Usually the success rate, and Mark can talk about some of that, we've done a couple at the city, if you can get 30 to 40% back success rate, that's good. If you can get 50 or more, that's really good. The piece that they'll always tell you is the longer you make the survey, the less participation you get, because people aren't going to spend the time.
Right.
ton of time doing it. They want a 10-minute survey. Is that kind of the same thing down there that you guys are seeing with the last
Definitely.
meeting?
Shorter the better. Make it as convenient as you can. Easy to return, all those things.
When I did the census in the past 12 months, it was, I think I got a paper copy and there was also a website you could go to. I did the website and it was awesome.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
So I don't know if that's an option or if it costs more or whatever.
I'll ask her about it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right. Move on to item 6A, to review the policies. I don't think there were any changes today, just to review.
Just review. Yep.
Okay. Item 7, unfinished business is the status of the governor's salary cap.
So regular legislative session is done. Nothing with the salary cap was accomplished. They're talking about having a special session on the budget in June. I would doubt that this topic would be a part of that, but I guess miracles could happen.
Sure.
So I guess I'd suggest just having on for one more month as a unfinished business item, and then we'll have to start talking about anything that you might do in connection with this topic,
Yep.
starting in the fall.
Okay.
Okay, for one more month on that, and we'll need some resolution in one form or another with this topic here. So I'll probably reach out to Brenda at some point in time to talk to her a little bit about this. So
That'd be great.
item 8, new business, is the discussion of the city pilot. Something I asked to bring today when Dot and I went into the meeting. And originally, we kind of went in thinking it was just going to be a conversation about if we were going to move the pilot or not, and then it turned into the city asking us if we would like to partner on some projects in the city. So I felt it would be best to come back and kind of gauge where everybody was at on this topic and see if we want to move forward with looking at options, or if the makeup of the board here wants to kind of leave things where they're at. I know Jeremy had sent out some information as to where we're at within our peers. Do you have that number, Jeremy, by chance? It was like,
Yeah, there was two really metrics in our kind of regional peer. One was 4.7%, one was 4.1. You know, we're at 4.5. So from the last survey, we're basically in the same spot. We're in our peer group. What that also tells you is the people that are in our peer, they're not moving their stuff either. You know, they're not outpacing and changing the percentages just like we haven't. So the fact that we did that 3-year phase where we ramped up to peer group, we're right in the ballpark we need to be. I've also done some informal surveys with just the municipalities in our own state. I'm waiting for a couple back, but it's basically reaffirming what was in the APPA salary, that the majority of the utilities our size are in that 4 to 5% range. Some are at 3. We've got a couple outliers like Moorhead, you know, where they're just skewed.
And Moorhead's been kind of an outlier on that concept for
Forever.
Forever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And then some have been less, and some, you know, their transfer is different. They're using different formulas. Some they just bake in, you know, a half a cent or a cent per kilowatt hour, and so the more the electric side sells in kilowatts, the more money they get, because it's just basically part of the rate. So you see some of that. That's becoming a little bit more common than just the gross operating revenue. I think some of the thought behind that is then that tries to give the city an incentive to grow, because the more they can grow and the more load that comes on, the higher their dollar transfer is. But still, the overwhelming formula is gross operating revenues, so we're still in that same consistent area.
I think what we heard was that the city is satisfied with the level of pilot today. They're really happy with the lack of fluctuation that they experienced in the past with the new agreement that's set up. So they like the stability of it. The level is fine. But then the conversation then went over to, you know, you got pretty good cash balances. So, you know, either pilot could increase in the future, or if you're willing to do or going to do projects that make sense for the community, they like that idea too. And they talked about the solar project that we have going. It's very nice to see that going in. You know, we did that really on on our own. That's great. But in the future, the question is, if those cash balances continue to grow, what's the plan? So that's where it led into the project-based and working with the city on project A, B, or C. So,
Some were energy related and some were not. I think everybody
Yeah.
saw.
I was gonna say, if they're energy related, that would make sense. If it's just a new city park or something, you kind of question that, you know.
and then not city park related necessarily, but, you know,
Yeah.
upgrades to facilities or even working with the school district, whatever options could be on the table, but those projects would, in my mind, need to be at the discretion of the commission after analysis of our financial situation and whether or not we're in a place where we think those dollars can be spent.
Yeah.
You know, that's our responsibility first and foremost, is to make sure that the utility is in a good place. It's taken a long time for it to get where it is, and you sure as heck don't want to return to where it came from. But I understand where they're coming from too. You know, the message is always there that the potential is that any excess funds can be transferred to the city.
And that's per the charter.
Right.
So when I think about this conversation, I think about exactly that. The charter says excess cash within the utility can or should go to the city. Can, we'll use the word can for now. At the same time, if there's a project that's energy related, I got to consider that. I more general purpose fund transfers, even project based, make me a little bit gives me a little bit of cautionary reservation to, because it almost feels like it's a faux tax. It almost feels like it's not following the protocols in place for taxation, and I want to make sure that we're not towing that line, and that's not what the city's asking us to do. But I in the back of my mind, I have reservations about doing an end around on the process the city has in place. I am in favor of considering those projects on a case-by-case basis. And I'm more in favor of supporting a project if it's energy related or benefits the utility. And in my mind, going back to a rate study done 7 or 10 years ago, we have a heavy concentration of our electrical revenues generated by 1 to 2 customers. And the further that we can diversify that customer base by growing and attracting additional industry and business and ratepayers, I'd support that, because in the end, that's additional consumption for the utility and sales for the utility. Those sort of thought processes are ones that, in my mind, might percolate to the top of a project list that I'd be interested in considering on a case-by-case basis. And that'd be my read. I'd like to keep the pilot percentage as pilot percentage where it is. I think that's fair, and that's what they're asking for, and they're okay with.
Yeah. And I didn't get the impression that we should expect the city coming next year or the year after saying, hey, the pilot percentage isn't enough. It was more of a long-term question, you know, of is this something that the commission would be interested in? You know, I think the first thing they threw out was the lighting at Roberts Park. And down there, all the lights need replaced.
I think there was 2 stadiums or 2
Yeah.
ballparks or whatever.
So, you know, is that something we consider enough energy related that makes sense for a project for us to do? Or is, when we say energy related, are we talking more about the solar we're putting in, you know, more production and expansion of the tax base ideas? So I think it'd be a great topic for strategic planning, to think about it a little deeper and find out exactly what the commission thinks and where we sit on it.
Coming out of your pilot conversations with the city, what's the next step? Can we wait to have the next conversation till after strategic planning, or how is it
Yeah,
left?
but there was nothing
Yeah.
pending. I mean, basically it was them saying, yeah, we're satisfied with the stability and the amount right now. There's been really no conversations of it's not sufficient on their side. I do think it's a longer term question
Okay.
that we have time to answer.
Yeah, I think strategic planning would be perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Bob?
I agree.
I know you're almost done.
No, I agree with what everybody's saying. I mean, I agree with Bob's statement about, energy-related projects, and they have merit. I get that, I understand that, and they do. I agree with what Anthony said, and Don, I agree. We've done a marvelous job with pilot from what it was to what it is. All while keeping our revenue steady, all while keeping rates unchanged, which is fantastic. I think we need to keep in mind the utility going forward. We've got some expenses coming up sooner than later, and rather than cornering ourselves now without having thought down the road or thinking in the future, I won't be here, you guys will, and I don't think you want to take that on at that time.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy touched on that during the meeting too, Plant 2.
Yep,
That's
that's
a
exactly
big
what I'm talking
question
about.
mark going forward.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Dollars,
And we've been able to invest in our infrastructure, the generators that we're doing. We've done a good job with that, but we need to keep thinking like that too.
Right.
Yeah, and that was kind of I would say, was more the gray part of the conversation, because that question was brought up in relative
Yep.
to cash balance, and so we got a lot of regulatory things that are gonna be changing, the industry's gonna be changing.
Yep.
I don't know down the road how much we're gonna be run generators, if they're gonna put permitting requirements or restrictions on how much, carbon we can push out there, and so that becomes a bigger conversation if we start getting limited on the amount of fleet that we can use here, and the commission says we still wanna have local reliability here, that's a core piece of ours, then you're looking at other projects that provide energy that aren't carbon-based, right? And so to be able to put a price tag or a dollar value on that right now, that's just hard to do, and so I prefaced, the dollar cash balance that we have looks like a lot of money, but in the energy industry, it's not. When you start doing $8 million projects, $10 million projects, now again, you can bond for a lot of that stuff, but, so that's kind of how I worded, talked about the cash balances. There's gonna be things that are changing that we just haven't put a price tag to yet, because some of it you're waiting to see how things are gonna change. Regulatory, having strategic planning meetings has a conversation about, do we want to be in front of some of this stuff and just move that direction anyway?
Well, and I think maybe we do need to try to put a cost to some of those things. Just as an explanation of the cash reserves and what they're there for, instead of it being as gray as it is, but trying to say, hey, if this comes about, we think this is the cost, to try to explain it out. They were very appreciative also of the money that we spent for the gas situation too. So
Yeah.
That's right.
that was another use of our funds that they were very happy about, that we decided to make that move.
So those are pieces that, related to the strategic planning. I would think about a couple things, right now on the CIP, the capital projects, we've got a 5-year, just under $3.5 million worth of CapEx we're setting aside. That's just our maintenance, what we're setting aside for just general maintenance, nothing of new projects, major issues. If I looked at our true 5-year CIP today, what it is for 5 years, and it's $4.2 million. So most people do earmark their 5-year CIP. We just chose to do the maintenance side of it, just to help maintain. That would enter $800,000 into the CIP designation. We've talked about the rate stabilization fund, moving that up to the natural gas side. The 1.2 million was kind of talked about, that would add another 600, you know what I mean? So when you start talking about these things, even though we haven't designated it and it's kind of sitting in undesignated, those are real concerns and things that you have to make sure that you have in place for that. The other one that we've talked about over the years, and again, this one really is more of a policy decision on how proactive you guys want to be on moving programs, initiatives forward. As there are utilities, and we've talked about that in the past, Moorhead has an investment fund that they've earmarked dollars specifically for technology, new technologies. Back then it was the wind and the solar and anything that's coming up that we want to be not necessarily on the cutting edge of it, but moving a little bit quicker than most utilities. And so those are things that you should think about. Do we need to be setting aside money to investment fund for battery storage or for hydrogen technology, for renewable natural gas, and how do those things look? I know the city's looking at some hydrogen things, and so that would be just hard to put a price tag on, but we could try to quantify what projects do we think could come down the road in some of those areas. But those are fairly large strategic planning topics that you guys have to decide on where you want to be that will really drive project-based expenses. And so just a couple things off the top to kind of keep in your mind for that.
Well, I think the full funding of the full 5-year CIP is a real low-hanging fruit. I think you should just do that. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
And the rate stabilization fund, I think, is the next one, or it's at the same level. I think you kind of assume that until you hear differently from us. Because I know you're working on that and some other potential alternatives for that concept. So that right there is $1.5 million or so of that unreserved funds. And whether it's called an investment fund or a cousin of that, I think
Technology fund
or investment fund or generation fund or whatever. Generation's in our DNA and probably in the long term should stay. But that's really changing over, and the next big project is 2, and that's a tens of millions of dollars project, and I think we need to be thoughtful about what that if we replace it, what does it look like, and what kind of project is it? And I think we got to think about that for years, and prepare for that for years, both fiscally and from a philosophy standpoint.
Mhm.
So if we start that now, I think we should consider that as one of the options too.
And things will change. Our financial picture will change here too. We've got some things, the gas pipeline coming up. End of that, I should say. Things are going to change here too.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, we need to be fair to the city. They own us. So we can strike the balance up.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else on that from anybody?
I'm gonna ask Jeremy a question. You started getting transition back on with the employees because of COVID? With the governor relaxing stuff, that he started that?
We haven't sent out the official revised plan yet, so we're still working on that. We were doing a few things, but yeah, we've transitioned, and we've been transitioned back to just normal operations as far as people being back on site. Now we're obviously away from the masks. We don't have
Yeah.
masks. We do have some people still taking their own, not personal, but separate vehicles. We're gonna talk about that. I would say, generally speaking, more people are not probably vaccinated here than are vaccinated, I would say. And so obviously my main concern on the ones that aren't vaccinated are the ones that are more of the operational people. So my only minimal concern as we're getting into heavy construction season and generating season. So, the risk that we run is, if we start having large amounts of people going out in departments where it slows down services and generation, that's a concern of mine. So we got to work through that a little bit of piece. But yeah, for all practical purposes, what we're gonna let the customers know is they don't need to wear a mask coming in. We still have the barriers up there, the lays up front. They're not gonna have to wear those. So we're gonna be back to fairly normal operation. The other piece I would have you guys consider, thanks for bringing that up, Bob, I was going to forget about today, was getting back into just our normal meeting where the staff are back in. Mark and I are sitting back up there. I don't know what your guys' comfort level is. Our EDA meetings are back to normal. We're back out at the incubator building and we're back in there. So I think that would, I know you guys have expressed trying to get staff back in here. If you guys are comfort level with that.
Yeah. I would welcome that.
Yep,
okay with
me
that?
too.
City just voted last night to go back to their normal meeting.
Does that mean I can move back to the further?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are they going to do it?
I like having Bob at the desk.
Back to the adult table, Bob.
So if you guys are comfortable, we'd go back to normal setup for the June meeting?
Sure.
Yeah.
You guys okay with that?
Do we need to vote on that?
I don't know if you
I
formally
don't think
took
for that
action
piece.
to not do it.
Okay.
So I think it's just a.
Yeah. I just really want to get to a point where Yannick comes back. I think he's just taking a break.
Specifically him.
I thought you were going to exclude him.
No, he hasn't been here in 9 months.
It would've been
Yeah,
great if he was here
absolutely, Jeremy.
today, but
Well, so the other piece of that I would ask you guys if you take a vote on is, I sent an email earlier today about moving the June meeting up to the
Yeah.
23rd. Is that a conflict for,
I responded back.
okay.
Yeah, so did I.
I know Anthony and Don, you guys meet. Do you guys have a
Works
problem
for
with the
me.
23rd?
Yeah.
Works
I'm
for
good.
me.
Okay.
Yep.
I just happened to look, there's 5 Wednesdays, so it'd be a full week.
Yeah. No, I think that's fine.
Good.
Yeah.
So we should take motion, a
Yeah.
formal action to move the June's meeting to the 23rd. Move it up a week.
Someone like to make a motion to move our meeting up 1 week to June 23rd.
So move.
Motion by Anthony,
Second.
second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you for doing that. It was
Yes. Now you got big stuff going on.
I was kind of debating, and I kind of over the last few weeks, I'm like, I can tell you, you want me to go up and do with the financial aid stuff. I'm like, oh, all right.
You're gonna need more than a week for that.
Yeah.
All right, then, item 8B is the discussion of compensation study.
So Angie and I did have a follow-up with a consultant. We used Ann Hutchinson last time from Springstead. They've been obviously acquired by Baker Tilly, which is a large CPA firm, so they've got way more resources now. Just talked about what the normal protocol is for, kind of a review of compensation study, knowing that we went through a full-blown one last time with the review of job classes and putting in a new performance-based system and that criteria. And so kind of told her what I thought the general scope of work should be, which is a market review of our salary and benefits, a review of all of our classifications, make sure we're still in compliance with internal pay equity and also legal compliance with labor laws. And then if there were any type of jobs that the managers felt there was a significant change in responsibility or roles, that we would have at least an ability to evaluate some of those pieces. So we originally put $25,000 in the budget. For that, I wasn't quite sure how much of a scope we need to have on a review of this project. She did come back. I had a chance to look through it a little bit this afternoon. To do that scope of work would be about 3 months, 2 to 3 months worth. I did ask her if we would be able to have it back in time to go into labor negotiations with the union here towards the fall, because our contracts expire at the end of this year, so we'll have to start doing that probably in October, around there sometime. That was fine. The scope of work wasn't a huge issue for her on that piece. So we'd be well. Looks like we'd do well in the budget. She quoted about just under $8,000 for that piece, and then any direct expenses if they had to come out or we wanted to present or mileage and things. So because it's going to be more abbreviated, we're going to be well underneath that. So a couple of things I had you guys think about is the original peer group that we used was we originally had 42 utilities in there. Private and public sector, we only got 22 respondents back, so about a 50% success rate. I do recall one of the main concerns we had last time with the full-blown compensation reviews, we didn't get enough natural gas data on the side. We just weren't getting enough information. People weren't supplying stuff from the private sector on that side. The municipal world, there isn't a lot of natural gas companies like us. So you just are limited there. The one thing she assured me this time around, so we did talk a little bit about that, is they now have access to private databases because they're with Baker Tilly now, and so they get the private sector salaries get updated every quarter, so they'll have the most current, up-to-date private sector data in the natural gas industry for our region. She did say it won't be by specific company, but it'll be aggregate, which is fine. So that will help our situation as far as getting enough aggregate salary data on the natural gas side. Hopefully give us a better indication of where we're at on that division side. And then within the proposal, she left that they would reevaluate up to 5 jobs if we needed to. I don't anticipate there being that many. We haven't had a significant organizational change. There are a couple that she has to review because we've done since that time. We have created that GIS position here. So I'm sure she'll look at that, just make sure that is properly scored and it falls within our equity, which I don't have any concerns that it won't be on that time. I just can review the things. So the scope of work will be shrunk down a bit more. But a couple questions for you. Are you okay with the peer group that we have identified originally? Keep that consistent. Are you okay with the time frame of sometime, probably getting stuff back by September, going into union negotiations? And then is there anything else you guys wanted to see on the study? I want to make sure I'm putting that in the scope of work.
You covered it pretty well. And the the group needs to be as large as possible because you say you get less than half response. So.
Right.
But I'm happy to hear that they have a bigger database on the natural gas side.
Yeah.
I was too. We offered to do, at least on the public sector side, if they got us the letter, the information that they want to capture, we would do a lot of sending that out to our peers. So we'll get that stuff back from, I'll get it back from Mark at Austin Utilities and Vernell with Detroit a lot quicker than they will. And we share a lot of that data anyway. So we offer to help just to speed up the process. If you want us to help you on the public sector side, we can do that stuff. So she thought that would be good if we would come out on that. Sounds like you're okay with all that stuff, huh?
Yep.
Looks good to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll keep moving forward then on that stuff.
All right, then. Item 9 is to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Anthony, second by Monty. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Deposit closed at 13,738, also up 81 points. The 10-year U.S. Treasury bond finished at 1.58%. Some stocks of interest closed as follows. 3M slipped 13 cents to 201.58. Walmart dropped 17 cents to 142.17. John Deere 357.74, off by $2.95. Medtronic 126.27, a decline of 2.13. Lowe's gained 58 cents to 193.60. General Electric rose 28 cents to 13.40. McDonald's 223.35, an increase of 21 cents. Coca-Cola 55.03, elevating by 24 cents. Excel Energy fell 24 cents to $71 even. Honeywell ramped by 21 cents to 224.47, excuse me. General Mills 62.83, down 2 cents, and Bank of America 42.04, up 3 cents. This business report was brought to you by Hutchinson Financial, securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Inc., member FINRA SIPC. This information is not intended as a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security referred to herein. Investments mentioned may not be suitable for all investors. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Hutchinson Financial is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. This is Joel Kraft with your Wednesday market recap.
I just love this show. 1260 AM and 96.5 FM. The all-new KDUZ.
Tell me, baby. I've been a fool before, wouldn't like to get my love caught in the slamming door. Are you more than hot for me, or am I a page in your history? I don't mean to make demands, but the word and the deed go hand in hand. How about some information, please, 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 please? Straight up now, tell me. 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 Do you really wanna love me forever? Or am I caught in a hit and run? Straight up now, tell me. Is it gonna be you and me together? Or are you just having fun? Straight up now, tell me, do you really wanna love me forever? Or am I caught in a hit and run? Straight up now, tell me, is it gonna be you and me together? Or are you just having fun? Straight up now, tell me, do you
We both lie silently still in the dead of the night. Although we both lie close together, we feel miles apart inside. Was it something I said or something I did? Did my words not come out right? Though I tried not to hurt you, though I tried, but I guess that's why they say every rose has its thorn. Just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Yeah, it does. Listen to a favorite song playing on the radio. Yeah, the DJ said love's a game of easy come and easy go. But I wonder, does he know? Has it ever been like this? And I know that you would be here right now if I could have let you know somehow. I guess every rose has its thorn. Just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Though it's been a while now, I can still feel so much pain. Like the knife that cuts you, the wound heals, but the scar, that scar remains. Saved the love that night I vowed, knowing what to say. Instead of making love, we both made us separate ways. And now I he found some somebody new, and that I never meant that much to you. To hear that tears me up inside, and to see you cuts me like a knife. I guess every rose has its thorn, just like every night has its dawn, just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its thorn.
Come on.
Crank it.
1260 AM and 96.5 FM, the all-new KDUZ.